Hey everyone, welcome back to Mr. Geopolitics, and today is September the 21st. Today we're going to be discussing all the latest developments in Ukraine, but it's going to be a little different. We're not going to be focusing on developments on the battlefield, basically because there's some big news that has come out, and I want to focus on that. And the battlefield situation, I mean, it's more or less the front lines have stabilized, and I've discussed all of this in previous videos. The biggest changes on the front lines are that the Ukrainians have taken the village of Bilohorivka, and they're trying to establish a bridgehead right here over the Seversky Donetsk, and they want to take Liman. And they're making little incremental gains, but the main thing is that the Russians are fighting. Unlike what happened in Kharkiv a few weeks ago, where the Russians just basically withdrew, tactical retreat, whatever you want to believe or think. They withdrew. There weren't any major clashes. They just withdrew to the other side of the Oskil River. Kind of a smart move if you consider the fact that the Russians were overwhelmed, and if they deployed their reserves, and if they basically got tied down in Kharkiv, then the Russian reserves wouldn't be mobile anymore, and then that would allow the Ukrainians to attack other sectors of the front. The main issue is that the Russians are undermanned. They don't have enough foot soldiers. They don't have enough troops. They lack manpower. They are suffering from a manpower deficiency issue. And on the Kherson front, of course, it's basically stalled. I've discussed all this in my previous videos. You can go on my channel. I also upload raw footage every so often. So anyways, let's focus on the big news and what the ramifications are for the future in regards to the war in Ukraine. So basically yesterday, the day before, we received news that the separatist regions, the Russian-backed separatist regions in Ukraine, including the Luhansk People's Republic, the Donetsk People's Republic, and the Zaporizhia region and Kherson, will be holding referendums. So they're going to be holding a vote to determine whether these regions want to join Russia. Now, here's the thing. We all know what the end result is going to be. The majority here are ethnic Russians in this region in the east of the country. And this is not going to be a UN sponsored election. This is going to be a Putin style election. So the end result will be that these regions will join, they will vote to join Russia. They will decide to join Russia. And I wouldn't be surprised if 90% vote to join Russia in some of these regions. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but anyways, we know the end result, and we know that Russia will recognize these regions as part of the Russian Federation. Now, what does that mean? That means that Russia is going to annex these regions, just like Crimea. The Russians annexed it after a similar referendum. Now, here's the thing. What happened in Kharkiv was pretty much a disaster for the Russians. That's how most people look at it. But on the other hand, it's working in Putin's favor. Why is that? Because now all these separatist republics, these separatist regions, they're scared. They're horrified because, I mean, they're just proxy regions. They're Russian proxies. They're separatists. Russia could actually abandon them at any point, right? But if they're a part of Russia, if they've been annexed into Russia, and Putin and the Russian Duma parliament has accepted this, the Russians can't back down. And this will also enable the Russians to basically deploy their entire army to Ukraine. I mean, right now they have their regular, their professional army deployed, pretty much whatever they can muster, but Russia has 2 million reserves. And out of those 2 million reserves, Putin has announced in his latest speech that there will be 300,000 reserves, who will be chosen, who will be drafted basically and deployed. And furthermore, the Russian Duma has passed a law which basically increases the penalty for people, for men who avoid the draft. So basically, it's they've increased it to like 10 years in prison for those who avoid the draft, and they've passed a law where it's you can be in prison for 10 years if you surrender on the battlefield. So the Russians are doubling down, and Putin is trying to use this situation, what happened in Kharkiv, to his advantage. Before this happened, for example, the Donbass region, they were saying, we're not interested in a referendum until Russia basically liberates all of the territory that belongs to the Donetsk Oblast. Now, within a few days, this is the 21st day, so in 2 days, they're going to hold a referendum. Now, the Ukrainians are livid. They are pissed because Russia is not only annexing their land officially, but they're going to deploy 300,000 troops to the front. Now, a lot of people, a lot of pro-Ukrainians, pundits are saying, well, it's not going to make a difference. These reserves are going to be poorly motivated. They're not going to be well armed. They're going to be inadequately armed. That's just, I'm sorry guys, that's just not true. I know for a fact, we know that Russia, based on satellite imagery, they have at least 4,000 tanks that are deployable. They have a lot more than that, thousands more, right? But 4,000 tanks which are in good condition, which are deployable. And that's just from satellite imagery. That's just from what you can see on the terrain. They might have a lot more indoors, so I mean, they might have 5,000, but I mean, let's just assume they have 4,000. 4,000 various tanks, T-72s, T-60, whatever, T-80s. And Russia also recently, the Russians basically, the main plant, Uralvagontseva, I forget the name, but anyways, the weapons manufacturers in Russia are on double overtime. Everyone is working double overtime. So they're also producing, T-90s and whatnot, and whatever they need, right? So there's going to be a mix of some new equipment, a lot of older equipment, but it doesn't really matter for Ukraine because, I mean, what are the Ukrainians using right now? They're using M113s, and which the U.S. doesn't even use anymore. They're using, whatever they can get their hands on. They have some MRAPs from Turkey, some MRAPs from the UK, Australia, but really, I mean, they're basically also, in terms of equipment, I mean, you can say the Russians have an edge because they have a manufacturing sector which is intact, which hasn't been obliterated. But in general, in terms of equipment, it's mostly just old Soviet gear. Both sides are going to be using. Currently, the Russians have something like 170,000 troops in Ukraine. Okay, I read a report. It's about 170,000. Add to that all the militias they have. It's like 200,000. Around 190, 200,000 troops altogether. The Ukrainians, on the other hand, Zelensky said they have 1 million troops. But most analysts don't think that's true. Most analysts don't believe that. They think it's closer to 400,000 to 700,000. Because the 1 million figure, it includes basically police force and border guards and civil servants. So really they have like 400,000 to 700,000 troops. That's just the truth. Now, realistically, most of Ukraine's troops are conscripts, and a lot of them have only received a few weeks of training, a few days. A lot of them are inadequately armed. Some of them are just, they just have weapons from World War I and II. Believe it or not, it's the truth. It's a lot of Ukrainian conscripts. They have Maxim machine guns from World War I or World War II era machine guns. So most of them are inadequately armed. The Russians, those 300 troops, they have 2 million reserves. Why only 300 out of 2 million? Not because that's all they can. They could probably train a larger number. They could probably equip a larger number, considering all the weapons at their disposal. But 300,000 troops, because they're going to be well equipped, they might send more later, but 300,000 troops is the number of soldiers which they can train and equip well in a 3 to 6 month period. Now reserves, they've already the reserves Russia has, all of them have done, I believe, a year of service and a year of conscription. After that, they train once a month, something like that. Now, obviously, out of the 2 million, not all of them are as motivated, not all of them are young, not all of them are in shape, not all of them are strong. So they're going to pick the best of the best, the cream of the crop, and they're going to give them the best equipment they can. And 300,000, look, this is what I think. The Russians, when they attacked Kiev in the first phase of the war, they had 40,000 troops. That's what we're hearing. 40,000 to 50,000, something like that. And with that 40,000, you look at Kiev, they got pretty close. They got to the outskirts, right? 40,000, right? So if they had 80,000, you would think they probably would be able to surround Kiev, right? Probably, right? If that's double the number, look, they were really close. Now, if they had 120,000, 3 times as many, that's guaranteed, right? So that would just be 120,000 troops, right? Kharkiv is the same thing. They had 40,000 troops, or 30,000 and 40,000, and they got kind of to the outskirts, but they didn't really get close to surrounding the city. But realistically, if they had twice as many troops, I would say they might have surrounded it. 3 times as many, they would have surrounded the city. And basically, right now with 300,000 troops, here's the thing. Let's get into the strategic aspect of what they're going to do with those troops. The Russians are going to have a few options, okay? Because this is the rainy season now. September is upon us. It's raining in Ukraine. Everything's turning to mud. So going on major offensives is going to be really difficult. Armored vehicles are going to get stuck. They're not going to be able to move very quickly. Anyways, so aside from tanks, one thing is the Russians have a lot of armored vehicles, older stock. They have a lot of heavy machine guns they can mount on those armored vehicles. They have anti-tank guided missiles they can mount. Artillery, the Russians have thousands and thousands of pieces of artillery. So I think that those 300,000 troops, a lot of their equipment will be older, but it's still going to be effective. And I don't think the Russians are going to try to do what they did before, to go for Kiev and Kharkiv. I think they don't want to take that risk. What they could do is, one option would be this. They could come in from the east, right? Send troops from the east and basically go for the remaining territory of the Donetsk People's Republic, which is approximately something like this, something along these lines. So they could basically go for that. And just pushing forward from the east, I mean, right now Russian troops are on the outskirts of Bakhmut. They made some gains here recently. They lost Belorivka recently, but 300,000 troops going in this direction. Yeah, I mean, the Russians are going to take it. They're going to take the Donetsk People's Republic. There's nothing really the Ukrainians can do about it. 300,000 is just going to be overwhelming. They're going to be overwhelmed. And this whole area, all of these settlements, Kramatorsk, will fall. And then afterwards, what the Russians could do is, after doing that, they could then set up defensive lines. Then they could send troops from the east to the west, and they could go for Transnistria. And Transnistria is internationally recognized as part of Moldova, but it's an enclave. It's a separatist enclave, and there's 4,000 to 6,000 Russian peacekeepers there. So one of the main goals a lot of Russian pundits are talking about is connecting a land bridge to Transnistria, where this enclave is extremely pro-Russian. And even their flag has a hammer and sickle on it, like the Soviet hammer and sickle. So this could be one option, right? What you see here, what I've drawn out, that could be one option. They could just do that. On the other hand, if they do that, then they're not going to be able to attack Sloviansk and Kramatorsk from the north, because the Seversky Donetsk River is here. I mean, they could conduct a major river crossing, or like river crossings all along the front. But the Russians haven't had very good experiences with river crossings, because not every time, but there's several instances where they attempted river crossings, not on multiple bridgeheads, but just the mistake they made is they tried doing it on. They attempted a river crossing in one place on a front, on a specific front, and the Ukrainians pounded that position with artillery, and they actually destroyed a lot of Russian tanks and armored vehicles. So I don't think they're gonna attack from the east, go to west. I mean, they could, but I think that what they would want to do ideally is they would definitely want to attack Kramatorsk and Sloviansk and this whole region. I think they want to attack it from the north as well. Now, to do this, they have a couple of options. I mean, they could just establish a bridgehead, push the Ukrainians out from here, Yarova, which the Ukrainians have taken recently, and push them back all the way to the Seversky Donetsk River, and then the Russians could cross the Seversky Donetsk, but again, that's a river crossing, right? Okay, let's get to the point. So Putin has said, he has claimed that the Russians would take back these areas, and Kharkiv has been a goal for the Russians since the beginning. It's been one of their side quests, or I guess you could say, because Kharkiv is really close to the Russian border. Kharkiv is 40 kilometers, 30 miles. So the Russians have had their eyes on Kharkiv since the beginning, even when they after the first phase, when they withdrew from Kiev, they did not fully withdraw from the city of Kharkiv. They had like a little bridgehead, like a little slit of territory they controlled near the border. And of course they controlled all this. So anyways, the Russians could be looking, what I'm saying is that they could, when they deploy their 300,000 troops, I'm going to show you another option after I draw this out roughly. Oh man. Okay. Never mind that. So anyways, the 300,000 troops, what they could do is they could pull a really brilliant maneuver if they do this. Send troops like this and take Kharkiv, right? Pincer maneuver, take Kharkiv, surround Kharkiv. They should be able to do that easily with the 100,000 troops. And then they can take the main road. As soon as Kharkiv is surrounded, leave like 20, 40,000 troops to deal with that. And then go down this main road and just do what the Ukrainians did. Just cut through the area like a hot knife through butter. That's what you can do when you have overwhelming numbers. So don't fight for each settlement. Just surround each settlement, leave some troops, set up a defensive line, and then take the eastern portion of Dnipro. Just surround the eastern portion of Dnipro city. Then they could go down, surround the eastern portion of Zaporizhia. Troops from here will go up, and troops from here will go down, and they're going to meet in the middle. And now, what have the Russians done? What have they done? Well, they have essentially set up a line, a defensive line, and the Ukrainians are basically now surrounded, because here is Russia to the north. The Russians are here, right? The Russians are here, and the Russians are in Zaporizhia. So then the Ukrainians here inside of this little pocket, or this big pocket I should say, they're going to be surrounded. That is actually a viable option, right? And in that way they could take Kharkiv, and they could surround at least the eastern portions of Dnipro and Zaporizhia, and they could basically encircle the enemy. This will be a massive encirclement. And the forces here will pretty much, they'll have no choice but to surrender, because the Russians are going to be coming in from every direction, right? At that point, they're surrounded. If they don't surrender, they'll probably just be destroyed, right? That's another option for the Russians, right? Now, of course, this is more risky than the first option, but personally, if it was up to me, that's probably what I would do, because this will be very devastating for the Ukrainians. You're taking Kharkiv, right? You're taking Kharkiv, and at the same time, you are creating a situation where two other cities are now at risk, and you're encircling thousands of Ukrainian troops. The Ukrainians have probably 50,000 or more troops here, or more, probably more, and to encircle all of them, that will be a death blow for the Ukrainians. After that, I don't know how they could even think about continuing, right? But that's one option, right? And then there's another safer option where they could take Kharkiv, and they could just go from Kharkiv and take back the region they lost. The Kharkiv region they lost in the blue, and then they could send troops from the east to the west, and then from north to south. right? And from south to north, right? They could do that, which is less risky. They could take the city of Kharkiv, surround it, take back Kharkiv region, encircle all these troops here, and then quickly go down, avoid these cities, avoid Dnipro and Zaporizhia, just bombard the shit out of them, go down, and troops will go up and they can meet in the middle maybe somewhere or whatever. And then from the east to the west, these troops will come in. And that will be another encirclement. That's kind of a safer option. This option might actually be what we end up seeing, because the first option is really playing it safe, just coming from the east to the west, forgetting about attacking Sloviansk and Kramatorsk from the north, right? The second option is kind of risky because you're basically trying to encircle Kharkiv, and then you're trying to partially encircle two other major cities. This third option might actually be what the Russians end up doing, because it's an encirclement, but it's not an encirclement on such a large scale. You're cutting the front line a little bit, so this might be what they end up doing. But it might depend on the situation. I mean, they might attack and they might see that the Ukrainians are just crumbling, and then they might say, hey, you know what? Let's also go towards Dnipro, just surround it, set up a defensive barrier, and Zaporizhia, set up a defensive barrier, and that's it. So that might be actually what the Russians might do. Anyways, who knows what's going to happen? But one thing is for sure, I don't even know if the Russians are going to fight in the winter or whatnot. But this is actually perfect timing for the Russians, because it's September, everything's turning to mud. The Ukrainians can't really go on. It's going to be hard to go on major offensives, and then when winter sets in, the question is, are the Ukrainians going to be able to clothe and feed and provide fuel and housing for all their troops? Let's say they have 700,000 troops, conscripts. Just to feed all those troops, to give, because here's the thing. I saw a video yesterday where a number of Ukrainian troops, another protest video. These protest videos, we've been seeing them since the beginning, where Ukrainian troops get together and they record themselves, and they just complain about they just vent at the camera. They complain about everything that they have to complain about. And anyways, basically, the video I saw yesterday, those videos have died down since the Kharkiv offensive. I think the Ukrainians are clamping down on them. But these conscripts I saw yesterday, they're basically saying, we don't have enough fuel. We don't have enough food. We don't have enough ammunition. And honestly, if this situation doesn't change till winter, we're going to starve. We're going to probably end up dying. So the Ukrainians, they have to be able to clothe and feed all those troops. Yeah, of course, the West will provide them with funding and help. But, there was a report a month or two ago which stated that only a third of all weapons and equipment that are sent to Ukraine from the U.S. actually make it to the front. So, if you consider that, look, pro-Ukrainian crowd is going to say, no, that's not true, blah, blah, blah. But Ukraine is the most corrupt country in Europe, okay? If not the most corrupt, one of the most corrupt. So no matter what you want to say, no matter what you want to believe, I don't give a fuck, because the truth is the Russians are targeting Ukrainian supply lines, so all the shit is not going to make it to the front anyways, just because of that. And then because of corruption, which is prevalent in Ukraine, obviously some of those weapons and some of the food, whatever, gets siphoned off to corrupt officials. Obviously, that's just obvious, you know. Before this war started, there was the Pandora Papers, and according to the Pandora Papers, you won't hear about this ever on the Western mainstream media, but according to the Pandora Papers, Zelensky is extremely corrupt. He's a billionaire, a comedian who's a billionaire, and he's authoritarian, and he's, you know, they're saying basically he's clamping down on any opposition, and he owns a $30 million villa in Florida. So there is corruption in Ukraine. Look, I'm not saying the Ukrainians won't be able to deal with their logistics issues, but that's just something to mention. Anyways, the war is about to get a lot more exciting. I hate to say that because people are dying, but there is a level of excitement. I mean, that is part of why people, want to know about what's happening in Ukraine, because wars are exciting, right? Although they're tragedies, they're large. Any war is also a large-scale tragedy. But anyways, I'm yapping too much, so I'm going to end this. Guys, thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Thank you.